हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, आप सभी का हमारे चैनल हाई पेस एजुकेशन में स्वागत है। इस क्लास में हम देखेंगे क्लास 10th हिस्ट्री का चैप्टर द एज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन के नोट्स। स्टूडेंट्स, ये नोट्स बहुत ही ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है और बहुत ही ईजी लैंग्वेज में लिखे हुए हैं, बहुत ही ज़्यादा इफेक्टिव नोट्स है। स्टूडेंट्स, ये नोट्स आपको पूरा चैप्टर आराम से क्लियर कर देंगे और ये आपको इस चैप्टर में हाई स्कोर करने में भी ये नोट्स बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प करेंगे। तो इस वीडियो को एंड तक ज़रूर देखना। चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं हमारा चैप्टर द एज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। हर पेज को रीड करने के बाद मैं उसे लैंडस्केप में करूंगा, जिससे आप इन नोट्स का स्क्रीनशॉट भी ले सकते हो और बाद में आप इन नोट्स से प्रिंट आउट भी निकलवा सकोगे। चलिए स्टूडेंट्स, स्टार्ट करते हैं हमारा चैप्टर। इसका जो फर्स्ट टॉपिक है वो है प्रोटो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। इसके अंदर फर्स्ट पॉइंट है इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन विच वॉज प्रिवेल्ड इन इंग्लैंड एंड यूरोप बिफोर द फैक्ट्रीज बिगिन टू फ्लरिश। नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, 17th and 18th centuries. Merchants from towns in Europe began moving to village countryside. They supplied the money to the peasants and artisans and asked them to produce for an international market. They were not able to produce it from the towns because in towns, urban crafts and trade guides were powerful. Trade guilds in town, the objectives were: first objective A, trained craft people; second, maintained control over production, regulated competition and prices; and fourth, restricted the entry of new people into the trades. Rulers of that time granted different guilds of monopoly right to produce and trade. Next is the countryside. During this time in the countryside, open fields were disappearing for the poor peasants and the common land enclosed. This created trouble for the survival of the cottagers and poor peasants. So they turned to the new merchants from the towns and agreed to work for them. This was helpful for them to increase their income. Take the screenshot, students, after pausing the video. Next point is proto-industrial system was connecting towns to countryside. Merchants from the towns to the weavers and spinner, and the dyer to the village and again back to the town. Especially to London. London in fact came to be known as finishing center. Our next topic is the coming up of the factory. So first point is 1730s. The earliest factories in England came up. The first production was cotton. Second point is 1760s. Britain was importing 2.5 million pounds of raw cotton. Third point is 1787. Import of raw cotton increased into the 22 million pounds. Next we have a question, why this import increased? So the first point is a series of invention in the production. Second, efficiency of each step of the production process. Next, increase the output per worker, enabling each worker to produce more. Next, production of stronger threads and yarns. Next, costly new machines. Next, under one roof means one mill, all the processes. Next, careful supervision, regulation of labor, and watch over quality. Take the screenshot. Our next topic is the pace of industrial change. So we have a question here. Does industrialization mean only the growth of factory industries, and how fast was the process of industrialization? So first point we have, up to 1840s, cotton was the leading sector, and in the colonies from 1860s, leading sector from 1840s, expansion of railways in England, and in the colonies from 1860s, the demand for iron and steel increased. Third point, 1877, export of iron and steel worth about 77 million euros, double the value of its cotton export. Next point we have, new industries could not easily displace traditional industries. At the end of the 19th century, less than 20% of the total workforce were employed in the technological advanced industries. Next, textile was produced mostly for domestic units. Next we have, traditional industries were not based on steam engine technology. Instead of that, they were dependent on small and ordinary innovations, example food processing, pottery, glasswork, furniture, etc. Next, new technology spread slowly. It was expensive. Industrialists were cautious about using it. The machine often broke down and repair was costly. Take the screenshot. Next point we have 1781. James Watt improved the steam engine produced by Newcomen and patented the new engine. This industrial friend Matthew Booton manufactured the new model. Next, the new steam engine could not find buyers easily. Beginning of the 19th century, all over England, not more than 321 steam engine. Out of these, 80 were in cotton industry, 9 in wool, and the remaining in mining, uh, canned workers and iron works. Canal workers and iron works. Next point, we have historians realized that the typical work in the mid 19th century was not a machine operator but the traditional worker. Next topic we have is about the hand labor and steam power. So we have a question here: why the hand labor was important in Britain? So the answer is first point: seasonal nature of the industry. Seasonal nature of the industry. Gas works, breweries means wine making, bookbinders and printers, catering to Christmas demand, ship repair during the winter. All these were the seasonal industries. This industrialist mostly preferred hand labor. They were not ready to invest for machine. Next point, we have some products could be produced only with the hand labor's machines, which machines were used to produce uniforms, standardized goods for a mass market, etc. But the market always prefer for variety of things, which different designs and shapes. This can be done only by human hands. Take the screenshot. Example, in Britain, 500 varieties of hammers and 45 kinds of axes were produced. This required human skill. Next point, we have the Victorian Britain. The aristocrats preferred handmade goods because they were better finished, individually produced and carefully designed. They sold the machine-made goods in colonies. Next topic we have the life of the workers. So first point is villagers traveled into the cities. They were able to get the jobs with the help of their friends and relatives, but not everyone had social connection. They had to wait for jobs by spending nights under bridges or in night shelters. Next point, seasonality of works also led to prolonged period without work. Some continued in the towns and other returned to the villages. After the winter season, jobs in the tours to do jobs in the village. Next point we have, in the early 19th century wages were increased, but at the same time the prices also rose sharply. So the increase in wages did not make any benefit to workers. Second is many of them were seasonal workers, so their arrange income was very less. Till mid 19th century about 10% of the urban population were extremely poor. In 1830s, the proportion of unemployed went up to between 35 to 75% in different regions. Take the screenshot. Next, we have spinning jenny. Devised by James Hargreaves in 1764, the fear of unemployment because of this new machine leads the women who survived on hand spinning began attacking the new machines. After 1840s, building activities increased in the city leads to a lot of new employment opportunities. First, roads were widened. Second, new railway stations came up. Tunnels were dug up. Railway lines were extended, drainage and sewers laid, and rivers embanked. Next topic we have industrialization in the colonies. First, the age of Indian textiles. Under this, the first point is till 1750s. From Indian silk and cotton goods exported to the different parts of the world through land route and sea route. A. Armenian and Persian merchants took the goods from Punjab to Afghanistan, Eastern Persia, and Central Asia. Goods were carried on camelback. B. Surat port connected India to the Gulf and Red Sea ports. Masulipatam and Hooghly had trade relation with the Southeast Asian ports. Variety of Indian merchants and bankers were involved in this network. They did financing, production, carrying goods and supplying exporters. Next point, supply merchants. They linked port towns to villages. They gave advances to weavers, procured the woven cloth from villagers and carried the supply to the ports. At the ports, brokers of big shippers and export merchants brought goods from these supply merchants. Next, after 1750s, European companies gained power. They attained monopoly right to trade from local courts. They changed the exports from the old port to the new ports, means from Surat to the Bombay and Calcutta, which was controlled by European companies. Next, we have a question. What happened to the weavers? So the first is 1760s and 1770s. East India Company was getting competition from Indian market to supply textile goods for export. They got competition from Dutch, French and the Portuguese traders in India. Because of this competition, Indian weavers were able to sell their goods after bargaining. Next point, but once East India Company acquired power in India, they controlled all this competition by a system of management that would eliminate competition, control cost and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk goods. Steps adopted by East India to control exports in their land. So the steps are: first, by establishing a more direct control over the weaver by eliminating the existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade. They appointed a paid servant called the Gomasta to supervise weavers, collect supplies and to examine the quality of cloth. B. By the system of advances, once an order was given, the weavers were given loans to purchase the raw material, and after the production, they had to hand over the cloth to the Gomastas, only not to any other traders. Demand for more and more textile leads the weavers to produce more by taking loans and by using the engagement for all these family members in the production. The small land which the weaver is having with him knew had to lease out to devote all their time for weaving instead of doing agricultural activity on the land. Earlier, supply merchants had often lived in the village and made a close relationship with the weavers by looking after their needs and helping them in times of crisis. The new Gomastas were outsiders and they acted arrogantly, marched into the villages with the sepoys and peons and punished the weavers. Thus the bargaining capacity of the take the screenshot. Thus the bargaining capacity of the weavers reduced. So our last topic is Manchester comes to India. First point, beginning of 19th century, decline of textile exports from India. 1811 to 1812 was 33% and 1850 to 1851 not more than 3%. Next point, cotton textile industry developed in England, so the British government decided to increase the import duties on cotton textile so that Manchester goods could sell in Britain without facing any competition from outside. At the same time, British manufacturer forced East India Company to sell their products in India. Cotton weavers in India thus faced two problems. First, export reduced because of high import duties in Britain. Second, competition in the Indian market increased, especially from Manchester goods which were produced by machines and lower cost. Next, 1860s. Weavers faced a new problem. When the American Civil War broke out and the cotton supplies from US were cut off, Britain turned into India. They increased the cotton raw material exports from India and the Indian weavers were not getting the sufficient amount of cotton. The price of the raw cotton rose up. Next point, end of the 19th century. Factories in India began production and also led to a big problem for the weavers in India. स्टूडेंट्स, हमारा जो चैप्टर है द एज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन के नोट्स यहीं पर एंड होते हैं। स्टूडेंट्स, ये नोट्स बहुत ही ज़्यादा इजी लैंग्वेज में है, इफेक्टिव नोट्स है और सभी नोट्स पॉइंट्स के अंदर डिवाइड किए हुए हैं और जिनसे आपको इनको याद करने में और समझने में बहुत ही ज़्यादा आसानी होगी। अगर आपको हमारा ये वीडियो अच्छा लगा है तो प्लीज़ हमारे वीडियो को लाइक कीजिए और हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब भी ज़रूर करिए। आप नेक्स्ट वीडियोस कौन से चैप्टर्स पर और कौन से सब्जेक्ट्स पर देखना चाहते हैं हमें कमेंट्स में अंदर ज़रूर बताएं और आपकी क्या क्या क्वेरीज़ हैं वो भी हमें कमेंट्स कर ज़रूर बताएं। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग स्टूडेंट्स।